Hello everyone, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today I'm going to be playing a brand new game that just came out today. It's called Gettysburg, The Tide Turns. It's made by Shenandoah Studio, which is actually owned and published by Slitherine Ltd. So the war game / strategy game house Slitherine and Matrix Games are the individuals who are putting this game together. Now, if you're familiar with Shenandoah Studios, you may be familiar with their North Africa World War II games, or their Battle of the Bulge game, or Drive on Moscow, which were all very well-regarded games and originally were huge hits on the iPad. However, Shenandoah Studio announced back in 2013 they were working on this game, Gettysburg, The Tide Turns, and they had actually run a Kickstarter campaign which exceeded its goal and was by all means seemed to be successful. However, something, and I don't know what, between that Kickstarter campaign and 2014 caused the company to go bankrupt, and all the assets and whatnot were basically put up for sale. Everyone was kind of laid off, and work on the project stopped. All the Kickstarter backers were more or less doomed to not get anything for the money that they put in. However, Slitherine ended up buying up the assets of Shenandoah Studio, and over the last 3 years have done a major effort of recoding the game and kind of getting the game ready for launch, and they've also agreed to stand by the Kickstarter benefits that everybody signed up for when they supported the Kickstarter. So props to Slitherine for doing that. I think that's pretty cool. This is a turn-based game that puts you in charge of either the Union or the Confederacy at the Battle of Gettysburg, and we're going to go ahead and play this. So I did stream this last night, and I ran into some issues, but I ended up running into issues. I'm almost certain now that they were internet-related issues, because I didn't know it at the time, but while I was streaming, Comcast decided to do some maintenance, which caused a whole bunch of issues with my system, and caused, obviously my stream was unable to continue as well. So, in that case, I lost the recording of the game, so I just wanted to go back and kind of redo my first take or my first impressions. I've played it for a little bit now, but I'd like to kind of give you my take. So you can see here, Gettysburg, The Tide Turns, you're met with an initial menu. There's an online option, which I assume will be a sort of play-by-email type game, similar to the way their other Slitherine games look at. I'm really excited about playing this game online. What little I've poked around in the game itself makes me really interested in trying to, play someone on the channel, play, someone in a challenge. There's a learn button, which kind of acts like the tutorial. It basically just gives you an overview of, here's the Battle of Gettysburg, here's the objectives that you need to take. It gives you some information about, hey, this is what an infantry icon looks like, a cavalry icon, artillery, horse artillery. It gives you some information about the units, different types of terrain. Also explains kind of what different types of hexes are, so roads, for example, rivers, streams. And then also explains sort of the unit activation, the chit system, and kind of goes in more detail about that. But we'll talk about that as we jump into the game. So there's no formal tutorial per se, but it's a kind of click through that explains how the game works. Additionally, the game has a pretty neat feature, which is a history piece, where you can kind of go into the game, and if you don't know a lot about the Civil War or the Battle of Gettysburg, it's got rather bite-sized pieces. It's maybe like a total of 10 or 15 pages of history around Lee and Meade, the commanders, the first 3 days of the battle, well, the whole battle, information about the war, weapons, those kind of things, which is kind of neat. Like, if you're not really into the Civil War and you don't know a ton about it, this would do a decent job of giving you an overview history of it. And then there's some basic settings. So the game has sound effects, ambient volume, and music. Don't really need to touch that. And then the play option. So obviously the play option will cause us to play against the AI. If we take a look here, we can see there are multiple different scenarios. So there's one scenario that lasts, I believe, 10 or 11 days, which just looks at the first day of the battle. So the meeting engagement between the initial Union cavalry force and then the infantry that comes up and the Confederates that stumble into them near Gettysburg. You've got the second day battles, which take place principally on the Union left and right, the attacks on Culp's Hill and Little Round Top on the wings, and then the third day's fight, which includes some cavalry charges, but also the famed Pickett's Charge. Those are kind of the three grand campaigns. Each one represents about 10 turns. All told, there's a campaign option which allows you to play through the entire battle, so July 1st through July 3rd as one engagement. And then there is a couple of smaller ones that are a little bit more bite-sized. Pickett's Charge, that fabled high watermark of the Confederacy, is General Pickett and some 12,500 men with him charged across an open field and were butchered by the Union soldiers. And then the best 3 hours scenario, which really just looks at the fighting around Little Round Top, Devil's Den, the wheat field, and the peach orchard, that sort of fabled attack on the Union left flank, where the Confederates under General Longstreet rolled up, took the wheat field, took the peach orchard, shattered the Federal Third Corps, and came close to taking Little Round Top and turning the Union flank, but ended up just shy. Longstreet referred to it as the finest 3 hours of fighting that his troops ever did fight. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and start a series, which is a campaign, where we will look at the entire battle. We won't be playing the whole battle in this video. We'll get started, and I'll kind of explain the way things work, and then we'll follow that up with follow-on videos. We'll go ahead and hit next. What we're going to do is we're going to set the AI difficulty to 2, so there are 3 different levels. There's 1, 2, and 3. I played through 1 a little bit through the first day, and it seemed pretty darn easy, so I'm going to play 2. That's what I played during the stream. It was much more of a challenge. We were getting our butts kicked, but it was fun. So we'll play 2 stars. We could play face-to-face rather than against the AI, but we're going to play against the AI. 2-star difficulty. We're going to play as the Union, and we're going to go ahead and jump in. So you can see here, the first thing that you're going to see on the screen in front of you is just kind of an overview of the campaign. You've got, 31 turns to fight the battle. The Confederates, their victory objectives are to capture 2 objective hexes, which honestly seems kind of low, but all you need is 2, and there's like 12 of them on the map. With that being said, they're all focused around the Cemetery Hill, Cemetery Ridge area, which was sort of historically the anchor of the Union Army, so I suppose if they had lodged themselves in there, it would have been good enough for a victory. The Union victory conditions is that you need to have more victory points than the Confederacy. So currently, the U.S. has 2, the Confederates have none. I think that's just because they occupy victory hexes. I'm not sure. But those are kind of the different victory conditions. The Confederates have to take positions. The Union have to win victory points, which I assume you get by, killing more enemy troops than they kill of you. All right, so this is the first turn, so July 1st, hour 1, so it's the morning of July 1st, and what you can see here is the 1st Corps is the corps that the Union Army has access to. The 3rd Division is the is the Confederate Division under General Henry Heath. So he's this 1st Confederate force that's coming up to engage the Union troops near Gettysburg. The forces that we have at our disposal are just the 1st Corps. The forces that the Confederates have at their disposal this first turn is just the 3rd Division under Heath as part of A.P. Hill's Corps. So you can see here we've got sort of a random draw. So those 2 units were 2 chits, if you will. And this game operates a lot like a board game. So right now on turn 1, the only 2 things that can happen is the 1st Corps can move and the 3rd Division can move. And what you see is every single turn, you'll play through each one of those units or each one of those actions, which you'll see a little bit more of in the next turn. But you'll play through each one of those turns or actions every single turn, and the order of play is randomized. So basically, in this case, we could have either had the 1st Corps move first or the 3rd Division move first. It randomly selected Heath's division to move first, which is the AI. So we know that they're going to move first. We go ahead and hit continue, and we can see that Heath's division begins moving forward on the map here. So if we zoom out, we can see this is the map of Gettysburg. Their town is up here. All of the objective points are back here on Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill. And then, by the way, now that the Confederates moved, you roll another dice, but the only chit to pull from is the 1st Corps. So that'll be us. So as we zoom out here, we can see on blue, these are Union troops, but they're not part of our command right now. Right now, all we can move is the 1st Corps. So these are the cavalry under Devon and Gamble that are already in position along McPherson's Ridge, along with 1 artillery battery. This is the first elements of the Confederate force in red here. They're moving up this road toward the town of Gettysburg and toward these Confederate objectives. So the cavalry is going to need to try and slow the Confederates down so that we can get our troops into position. Now you can see here we don't have any other troops on the map, but what we actually do have is this little flag here, and I'm just going to kind of zoom in slowly as the camera pans over. You'll see this little star represents the 1st Corps, and that's where these reinforcements are coming in. So we have the Iron Brigade and Cutler's Brigade. 2 of the best brigades in the entire Union Army are coming up. But we can't get them all the way over here right away. We can only travel where we see these little circles, which indicate where we're able to march to. So we can see here we can march them up this road here. We could march them over open terrain. We could march them through woods and whatnot. But we're going to march them up this road. This is the Emmitsburg Road. And as you can see here, it's a little bit of a thicker road. This indicates it's a very good pike, which means you can move very quickly. There are other roads in the game. These little dotted lines, for example, represent kind of side roads. So you can move across open terrain, but you can move much less across open terrain. You can move across roads, these little dotted roads, which allows you to move more than across open terrain or more than across wooded terrain, for example, but not quite as far as if you move across this pike, this Emmitsburg Road. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and move these guys up the road so they can slowly start moving toward, our cavalry force there. And you can see here we moved them, and all of the units moved. If we wanted to, we could undo that move. And then you can see here Cutler goes right back to where he was when we click undo. But we'll move Cutler right back. And then if we were to hit next, it would show us if there's any additional forces, but there are no additional forces. I already told you what the undo button does. So once you're ready to move on, once you've moved all your forces, you just go up here and click commit. Okay, so that's the end of turn 1. We're on to turn 2. And as you can see here, there are now additional chits that can occur. So in addition to Heath, the Confederates now apparently have an artillery reserve unit, which is, I'm assuming, artillery. Additionally, there is a Csa Combat chit which can be drawn. And likewise, the Union now has access to the cavalry under Devon and Gamble that's on this McPherson's Ridge, as well as USA Combat. So now, every single time, every turn, we will randomly draw one of these chits, and then that unit will move or do its actions, and then we'll draw another chit until all 6 have been drawn. Combat represents where units actually fight. So the corps is where you kind of move troops around, but in order to actually start shooting and doing damage, you need to draw a combat chit. So we'll take a look at that in a bit, but we'll see here Heath won the first draw. So he'll start moving his troops into position. You can see he moved Archer forward, and then he's going to move Davis forward. And now they're kind of into the open, if you will. You can see another brigade's coming up under Pettigrew, and he has some other additional forces as well. He's got Breckinridge, or it's short, but that's what it is, Breckinridge. And then so we draw another chit, and this time you can see Csa Combat Results. So what we're actually going to see here is we're going to see these units that are all kind of adjacent with each other are now going to go ahead and fight now that we have drawn a combat chit. So he moved his units, but there was no guarantee combat would come next. In this case, combat did. And so we'll see. We can see here Gamble actually actually all of the cavalry flat out retreated with the exception of Devon. So sometimes units will decide to retreat on their own. And in this case, the cavalry, the Federal cavalry, did decide, Gamble and Kelf did decide to retreat without any input from me. So you're less likely to see troops just kind of run away like that when you have high-quality troops. For example, Gamble is an elite unit, and so is the cavalry under Calf. However, with that being said, it still can occur. All right. So we can go ahead and move again. Now, the thing is, with infantry, you can march right up adjacent to an enemy unit and then, engage them right away. In the case of cavalry, you cannot actually do that. So we can only move adjacent to a adjacent hex, which means we can move one away from the enemy, but we can't move actually into a hex that the enemy occupies. And that's kind of to symbolize the fact that that cavalry is more of a scout, more of a skirmishing force, and not really a frontline combat force. So we're going to go ahead and move Gamble into these woods because wooded terrain will give him some additional cover. Which will make his troops more efficient in resisting the enemy. We'll go ahead and move Devon into this wooded area, and then we'll go ahead and move the artillery under Calf adjacent to Gamble as well. So again, this is more of a blocking position, so we've been driven back from McPherson's Ridge. We did do substantial damage to Archer, but I'll talk a little bit more about combat in a little bit once we kind of have the ability to slowly show you what's going on with a Union artillery draw. So we'll end the cavalry there, and we can see the Confederates now are moving up their artillery as part of their artillery reserve. You can see it's kind of coming up here. All right, so we're on to the first corps. So we've got more reinforcements coming out of the map, but you can actually only move only one unit into a hex. So for example, I could call up Baxter's troops, but the problem is Cutler and the Iron Brigade are actually in the way of where he could go. So I can march him here, but I wouldn't be marching him as far as he can march. So there's stacking limitations. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and move the Iron Brigade first, get them out of the way, and then that will ensure that we march as far as we can with all of our new reinforcements. So we're going to keep moving the Iron Brigade up this pike. We're not going to move across open terrain just quite yet because we move further when we're moving across these roads. So we went ahead and move Cutler and the Iron Brigade. Now we're just going to go ahead and move Baxter, who's an experienced force. We'll go ahead and move Paul, who's also an experienced brigade. And then we'll move Biddle, who's actually a little bit further south. He comes on the map down here. You can see he's actually marching up one of these side roads. You can obviously tell he can't march anywhere near as far because he's coming up kind of back roads, if you will. And now we've got some artillery coming up as well. With that being said, that's all of our first corps movement, so we'll go ahead and do that. Now we can see here that we had a combat chit was drawn, but none of our troops were actually in range of the enemy, so the combat chit was skipped. All right, so we're going to start seeing elements of the 11th Corps coming up as well now, and we're on to turn 3. First things first, the first corps is moving first, which is awesome. That's a very good die roll for us because we can immediately start slotting our troops into position alongside of the cavalry here. And you can see as you move troops into position, other units will respond by altering their formation. So Devon's troops are kind of in this line formation. They link up with the Iron Brigade here. If we were to move Cutler in next to him, you can see Cutler forms up with his flank kind of bending back, kind of refused here. So again, we're starting to form a more cohesive front now that we're getting some additional forces up to deal with the Confederates here on Seminary Ridge. So we'll go ahead and kind of keep moving these troops forward. I'm going to move Biddle toward the Emmitsburg Road to try and get him into good marching terrain as quickly as possible. Stone's another brigade that just arrived on the scene, and there you go. That's all of our movement for the First Corps. So now the 11th Corps won its die, and you can see here they're coming up on the Taneytown Road. So we've got Schlifling and Krasniki who are both coming up. They're both raw troops, so they're not going to be as effective in combat, but they're better than not having troops at all. So we'll go ahead and bring these two brigades up, as well as start moving the artillery toward the scene. And that'll be it for the 11th Corps. Now we can see Heath is moving, so we'll see where the Confederates decide to move their infantry. He's moving Archer forward, despite the fact that Archer's brigade is pretty badly beat up. He's also moving Breckinridge. I imagine he'll move Davis in here and trying to overwhelm Gamble would be my guess. Although actually it looks like he's targeting more along the line of Devon, which is interesting. And you can see here he moved up Pettigrew behind him as well. All right, so we've got a chance for U.S. combat. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of explain what we're going to see here. First of all, we can see that the first thing that happens when you're in combat is actually artillery. If your artillery can bombard the enemy, you'll be given that option. This artillery obviously doesn't have good line of sight on the enemy, so this battery here is just going to end up doing nothing. We can also choose to retreat. So we've got units that are facing these enemy infantry. If we wanted to, we could say, all right, Devon, you've already lost 1 out of your 4 strength. I don't want to risk you getting destroyed, so let's go ahead and retreat you in this direction with this little white arrow, and then he would pull back in that general direction. And actually, that's what I think I'm going to do, because if you look here, when you're trying to evaluate how combat is going to go, what you'll see is these little arrows, which represent how much firepower or how much damage you're dealing out. In the case of Gamble, he's going to, and this is an estimate, so things change, but in the case of Gamble, it says it'll estimate he'll put 4 damage on Breckinridge, while he'll only receive 1. You can see the 1 coming back at him. So that's a favorable exchange. In the case of the Iron Brigade, they're currently shooting at Archer. Archer only has 2 strength. It looks like they're going to put 5 strength on him. And just sort of a refresher here, when we hover over Gamble, you'll see it says he's a cavalry unit, which we know. He's an elite quality troop, which means he'll be more likely to stand his ground. And his strength is 5 of 5, so that means the maximum strength of his unit is 5, and he's currently at 5. If we hover over Archer, for example, you can see he's an infantry unit. He's experienced, so he's not elite, but he's still very good. And he has a strength of 2 out of 5. That means he's already taken 3 casualties out of a possible number of 5, and he only has 2 left. So during combat, if a unit were to inflict more than 2 damage on Archer, his brigade would actually shatter and be broken for the rest of the battle. Again, the same thing can happen to our force. So Devon is currently at basically 75% strength. He's at 3 out of 4, and he's currently adjacent, and the way combat works is you fight with any unit that you're adjacent to. So you can see Davis's big brigade here. It's a raw brigade, but it is 8 out of 8 strength. That is a very strong brigade. And it's pointed toward Devon, and it says it's going to inflict 2 damage on Devon, which means he would only have 1 left if this battle were to occur. Now, Devon is adjacent from 2 units. That means Devon's fire is actually split between Davis and Archer. It's estimating he'll put 1 damage on Archer, but none on Davis. Frankly, if I'm likely to take 2 damage and only put 1 damage out, I don't see the point of fighting that, so I'm actually going to go ahead and tell Devon to retreat. I could tell the Iron Brigade to retreat, but I'm not going to, because if you look at the Iron Brigade, it's going to put 5 damage on Archer and suffer no damage against it. Now, that may change when Devon retreats, because the way this works is, right now Archer's adjacent to Devon and the Iron Brigade, so his fire is split between 2 brigades. That means the impact of his fire on either one of these is only half of what it would be if he was pointed just at the Iron Brigade. But the Iron Brigade's a strong unit, it's an elite unit, and it only has 1 Confederate unit adjacent to it, so even if it takes 1 damage, I'm more than happy to wipe out a Confederate brigade for the loss of 1 of our own. Additionally, I'm not going to pull Gamble out, because while he is going to take some damage from Breckinridge, he's also likely to put 4 damage on Breckinridge. That could destroy Breckinridge's brigade as well. Now, again, these are estimates, so often they don't play out exactly as you think, but in this case, it doesn't make sense to me to lose the majority of Devon's remaining strength for very little gain. But it does make sense to have the Iron Brigade and Gamble's brigade both fight it out. So that's kind of the overview of what you see as you go into a combat turn. Let's go ahead and commit, and you'll see Devon's pulling out, and now Archer's fire is all just pointed at the Iron Brigade. You can see Gamble is firing at Breckinridge, and actually he put 5 damage on Breckinridge, so he wiped out Breckinridge's brigade without losing a single unit, without losing a single strength, which is excellent. And I'm not going to advance. I could, if I wanted to, say advance, so I'd click on him and then he'd advance to this hex, but then he'd be up against Pettigrew and Archer, and he's a cavalry brigade. Additionally, he was firing from the woods, so he was in sheltered terrain. That does influence how much firepower you get. If you're in woods or high ground or other things like that, you get more, you get better firepower. So actually, let's go ahead and undo that. So we're going to leave Gamble where he is, and because we destroyed that unit, it allows us to advance and kind of pauses the combat, but I'm not going to go ahead and continue, or I'm not going to do anything with him, so I'll go ahead and hit commit, and then you'll see the Iron Brigade is fighting Archer, and likewise, they shattered Archer. So I'm not going to advance the Iron Brigade all by themselves to face off against 2 brigades of 16 combined strength, but it is pretty cool there to be able to see that we just wiped out 2 enemy infantry brigades. We just took out, I want to say, 40% of Heath's division's strength, and they're gone for the rest of the battle, so that's very good for us. So that's the end of that combat phase. Go ahead and hit commit, and now it's the cavalry's turn to move. So I think what I'm going to do is, it looks like the bulk of the enemy's strength here is in Davis and Pettigrew. They do have some strength coming up down this road, but they're probably still far enough away that they're not going to fight this very next turn. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put Gamble in these woods adjacent to the Iron Brigade, so if the enemy advances to try and overwhelm the Iron Brigade, they'll have some support there. Additionally, I'm going to go ahead and move Calf between Cutler and the Iron Brigade to kind of close this gap, if you will. And then I'm going to go ahead and move Devon to the flank. I'm going to put him in the woods on Seminary Ridge. He'll be to the flank of Cutler, kind of keeping his line in shape. So you can see here we've got artillery in the middle. If they advance through these woods, then we'll have the Iron Brigade, Cutler, and some artillery shooting at anyone there. If they try and advance at the Iron Brigade, then Gamble will support, so the Iron Brigade will be alone. And if they try to advance on our flank against Devon, then Cutler's brigade will be able to assist them if they go frontally. They could try and go up and around our flank, but trying to move up a ridge and around all in one turn would slow them down somewhat. So I'm happy with this distribution of forces. I'd like to get more of these guys up on the ridge, because if you look here, you can see this is a topographical map, and the Iron Brigade's kind of in a swell here, so they're not on top of the high ground, which will make them more exposed to an enemy attack. But again, that's why I moved Gamble to their flank to support. Cutler is on top of the ridge, so he's actually in pretty good position. Calf is a little exposed, so he'd probably die if they moved Davis here. But again, it would at least force any Confederate unit moving against our artillery to split its fire 3 directions, which would make them much less effective. Okay, so we'll go ahead and commit, and we'll see what happens next. You can see the next move is the Confederate Artillery Reserve, and you can see they bring Pegram's battery up here. Confederate artillery tends to be very good quality in this game, which is kind of interesting when you consider the fact that historically they had a lot of issues with the quality of their fuses. Not so much the crews, but they weren't all that decisive in battles except for like in close fighting, because they had really poor quality ammunition. Okay, so you can see here we had a combat phase. The Confederacy launched an artillery barrage against us. It didn't do any damage. It was the only thing that was in range of shooting at us. So that is that as far as that turn's concerned. And now we're moving on to turn 4, which will probably be the last turn in this particular first look video. You can see here we've got, no additional chits for us, but the Confederates now have Pender's division coming up, which is also of Hill's Corps. So it'll be coming up from the same direction that Heath was, but it's a very large and strong division. So again, the Confederates have more forces arriving as we're now 4 turns into the first day. The first thing that happens is the 11th Corps gets to go. So we've got additional reinforcements coming up, part of the 11th Corps. They won't be in time for this turn. But we'll just kind of keep them moving down the road toward Gettysburg and toward our positions. And then we've got Von Glees, and the one experienced brigade in the 11th Corps is Ames's brigade. So we'll go ahead and move him up at the lead with Von Glees in the rear. All right, so that's all there is to it for the 11th Corps. Go ahead and commit. And then the Confederates are going to move their artillery first, so you can see they're kind of moving in toward the flanks so they can better support any attack on Seminary Ridge. Hoping just maybe that the 1st Corps will win the next. So it's combat. And wow, you can see there they just demoralized the hell out of Cutler's brigade. That artillery bombardment was incredibly effective. He lost more than half his strength to that artillery bombardment, which I've got a minor beef with. I don't think that's very realistic. Especially a quality unit like that, on top of a ridge, nonetheless. Granted, they are in the open, there's no woods there, but again, they're on the high ground. The Confederates are in a swale, they're shooting up. That just doesn't seem right to me. Alright, so you can see here Pettigrew's advancing, and we're gonna see, it looks like the Confederates are trying to flank around with Davis. And it's now our cavalry's turn. I think the question is, because our 1st Corps hasn't gone yet, I'm going to pull Cutler back to try and give him some time to recuperate. I don't know if demoralizing works the same way that combat does, but you can actually regain strength over time if you just kind of let your forces sit there. I'm just not sure if it's faster when you're demoralized versus actually, damaged. They may be the same thing. All right, we can't, here's the thing, we can't move Gamble again, adjacent to any hex. But I'm not going to want... I'm not going to want Cutler engaged. I think what we do is we'll have... I'm going to pull Devon back. I'm going to move Gamble over here on the flank, and then I'm going to bring in Baxter and Paul, hopefully, and get them in range while I pull out Cutler. So, we're also going to pull our artillery back a hex. Then we're shooting up. Get these guns on high ground or something. I can't see or shoot at anything. Wonder if I can hit from back here. Alright. So, it should be our turn now. Oh, it's combat? I was hoping to retreat a different direction with the Iron Brigade. Yeah, I don't want to fight here, so I'm actually going to have both of my units retreat. Alright, now the 1st Corps gets to go. All right, so we retreated. I don't really want to retreat all the way back to Cemetery Hill, because that seems like giving up too much ground too quickly, but I don't really know if I have much of a choice. Cutler for sure needs to pull back. Just kind of sit him on this ridge back here. Let's see here. We can move the Iron Brigade back in, I suppose. What's Baxter? Is he experienced? He is. What happens if we move him here? 5-1? Yikes. About... I'm just trying to see what makes the most sense. Alright, so we'll move the Iron Brigade in here so Pettigrew can't go directly around our flank. We'll also go ahead and move some artillery up, so if they do move off that ridge, we can hopefully... Well, maybe we can just move them up here and hit them from the Cemetery Ridge. I guess we'll see. Meanwhile, Biddle is ready on the road. So is Stone, who can actually move further. So we'll go ahead and get these guys moving up. All of our forces have now moved. We'll go ahead and commit that. And we're now into turn 5. I think this will actually be our last turn before we take a break here. So you can see USA Combat comes first. We don't have any bombardment, so this artillery I moved back here can't hit. But we do have Baxter and Paul, which should be able to do some damage to Davis, and it doesn't say they're going to take any damage, so I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah, well, alright, Paul already took damage. Great. And more damage against Paul. So they beat Davis up pretty good. They took out almost half of Davis's brigade's experience, but Paul himself suffered some damage. And we're not going to advance. We're just going to kind of hold ourselves in position. So Pender's division's going to start coming up, or continue coming up. Let's see, they're back here a bit, so I think they're still a turn away from being ready to fight. But Heath's division is really shattered. It's got just, I think, Pettigrew and Davis, I think, are the only 2 brigades left that I see from them. Pender's division's a nightmare. They're all like 8 strength units. Well, not all, but still, it's a very good unit. Alright, so we're gonna move Paul back, give him some time to recuperate. Move him back towards Cemetery Ridge. Meanwhile, we're gonna go ahead and move Biddle, who's now arrived. Gonna kind of... I want to move him up here, because last unit we had in open terrain on top of the ridge just got slaughtered. What do we do with our artillery? Can we move it? We can't get it up high ground at all either. One's better. Stone is experienced, right? So we'll move Stone into these woods. Move Biddle as well. I think we'll keep him, well, we'll keep the Iron Brigade on the flank there. What else do we still have to move? Cutler, you're going to stay put and recuperate. Iron Brigade, you're going to stay put, and Baxter, you're going to stay put. Okay, so we'll kind of stay put here. We'll see how the enemy advances against us. Their artillery reserves, their first group that gets to move. My own artillery is poorly placed. I should have them on high ground or something. Oh, wow. They're moving their artillery up behind us. They're trying to go up and around us. I mean, the objective is these ridges, so it would make sense if they kind of ignored our position on Seminary Ridge and tried to go around our flank. I just don't know what they're really hoping to accomplish, because it seems unlikely that they'll, you know, take it. Wow. 6? Let's actually, we can undo multiples, right? Just trying to see if we get a better odds. It doesn't seem like the odds matter. Now these 2 units are raw. I'm kind of more okay throwing these guys around and just hoping for the best, because Confederate, these guns are so damn good. I would love to take them out. Got more reinforcements coming up, by the way. But I'd really like to try and protect my heavies, my, you know, Iron Brigade. Cutler's already chewed up, but hopefully he can regain some strength. I don't want to waste aims. So I'm just going to try, this is kind of like a flank attack against this artillery. We'll see what happens here. If depending on what the next step is. We'll keep gambling these woods. Really wish I could move Devon in to, like... Alright. And Csa Combat. So I think the only combat is going to be this artillery, which they put 2 in... Oh, God. You can see they drove both of those infantry brigades of ours back. We did some damage to them, but not much. Just a single artillery destroyed for the loss of 3 infantry. You can see here, Heath is moving, but his brigade is kind of in the worst shape. You can see moving Davis, he's moving Pettigrew, trying to pick off this artillery piece of ours. And we can see here that Cutler just actually healed. So we're now to turn 6. I'm going to go ahead and save the game. Should probably, I don't think I can actually, gotta kind of go between, so I guess we'll have to let Heath move first. So interesting, he moved the infantry there and then pulled them back immediately. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and save. Okay. Saved. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and back out, and we'll join back up another time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this first look of Gettysburg, The Tide Turns. I know I enjoyed playing it. Let me know your thoughts below. It's a really interesting game. I like kind of the way formations move or adjust based on where you move units. It's always nice to kind of create like a nice pretty line with a pretty, that's all I'm going to say. A nice line with a refused flank or those kind of things. Those are aesthetically pleasing to me for whatever reason. If we take it the victory status right now, currently we're winning. The Confederates have no objectives. We've got 53 victory points. They have 14, but again, that's very early. They're about to get a massive second corps coming in, while we'll probably be struggling here in the afternoon shortly. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.